Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko has just shocked Red Bull and most notably Max Verstappen with his recent comments. He revealed that McLaren's recent domination in Formula 1 has marked a whole new world that has been alien to Max Verstappen, and winning won't be a given in the last 6 races. Could the team be setting up for a disappointment and have their big mistake this year cost them too much in the end? Lando Norris dominated the last race in Singapore, winning by 21 seconds over Verstappen after starting from pole position. McLaren has emerged as the benchmark this season, with 3 victories in 4 races since the summer break, overtaking Red Bull in the championship standings. The Woking-based squad's growth has coincided with Red Bull's rapid collapse, with Verstappen now winless in 8 races, his worst run since 2020. And it's not looking to end soon if we're going to believe Helmut Marko. Marko said that McLaren's massive advantage over Red Bull was addressed during a long conversation with Verstappen, who leads by 52 points over the phone. Well, that Lando's dominance is alien, especially on medium tyres. He took 9/10 to 1 second per lap from us, Marko said. Even if our car had been, let's say, optimized, he couldn't have driven those times on the medium, and we're all wondering how he did it. When Norris takes 9/10 to 1 second per lap from us, then it's a whole new world. And don't forget, in the second stint, Charles Leclerc was just as fast as Lando, or almost a bit faster. So for us, I would almost say that second place was like a victory. However, according to the team, Red Bull is finally on the right track. Red Bull's problems hit a low point at Monza, when Verstappen referred to his RB20 as a monster and complained about balance issues. Marko agreed with that assessment, stating that Red Bull must emphasize bringing the vehicle to the operating window that brings out the best in Verstappen. It was the worst race since, I don't know, I can't remember when we got it so wrong in terms of strategy, pit stop, speed, everything, Marko acknowledged. But we are now on the right track. The car needs to have a wider operating window, not one where relatively small changes or temperature differences of 6 or 7 degrees can affect performance. Then more speed and also more bandwidth so that Max can attack. We know that he needs a car with front-end bite. And the next race in Austin will be the deciding factor in the F1 title duel, according to them team. If they won't be able to keep up there after their last upgrades of the season, it's lost. Last month, Red Bull released a subtle improvement to Baku, which prompted the tiny rise that allowed Verstappen to finish second in Singapore. While he acknowledges that the redesigned floor helped to relieve Red Bull's rut, Marko insists that the future improvements are critical to catching McLaren. It is a step in the right direction, but it is not enough, he emphasized. They have worked very, very hard and have gained certain insights. It wasn't a completely new floor, but parts of it were new. But I think the deciding factor will be performance in Austin, and there are a lot of other things coming. Marko claims that coming second is not good enough in the final 6 races, despite the fact that doing so would ensure Verstappen wins the Drivers' Championship. Red Bull is not in charge of the Constructors' Championship, however, as McLaren's double podium in Singapore has seen them gain a significant 41-point lead. The Austrian admits that it will be difficult for the Austrian team to close the deficit with the performance we have, but he believes that things may change. I'm optimistic that if Max wins races again, and Sergio can then achieve 3rd or 4th place, then things will look different again, according to him. But the focus is primarily on the driver's title for now. But if we achieve that, and I believe that's only possible if Max wins at least 2 more races, then it will also look a bit more promising in the Constructors' Championship. What do you think? Can Red Bull still turn it around in the last 6 races? Helmut isn't so sure, and to be honest, it's understandable why. But even Max Verstappen hopes and believes that Monza has been the low point of Red Bull's Formula 1 season, as the team looks to regain form with its 2024 chassis. So, they might have found something somewhere. Verstappen spoke in Singapore on the obstacles Red Bull has experienced following a strong start to the year. In the beginning, I was surprised as well, but if you look at what our problems were, then I fully understand it, the Dutchman says. At some point, we have gone in the wrong direction. The other teams have either not faced that particular point yet, or they developed the car in a slightly different way. That is always difficult to assess. With Verstappen still dominating in Japan and China, the Miami and Imola race weekends in May seem to be a watershed moment, but the current world champion says he knew far earlier than the rest of the world that something wasn't right at Red Bull. Early on, I realized that the feeling was very different from last year's car in terms of balance, he explains. At that time, our car was still a lot quicker than the others. Or maybe I should say that the others were not so good back then. So at that stage, we could still compensate for our difficulties. In the races after that, it got worse and worse. At one point, our car was just very difficult to drive, and at the same time, the others made real progress. Verstappen has often said that the front and back ends of the car no longer seemed joined, and that there was a noticeable difference from last year's machine. Verstappen acknowledged during the car's launch in Milton Keynes last winter that he was stunned by the abrupt alterations when he first saw the RB20's designs, raising the issue of whether the change of concept was a mistake in hindsight. "I don't think you can tell from the outside what went wrong, so that's not the point," Verstappen said. "What the car looks like on the outside is not the issue." Verstappen's handling comments suggest that Red Bull's problem was at least partially related to the floor. The unintended ramifications of a new floor have caused headaches for many teams under these laws. Mercedes battled with ground effect cars for 2 years, while Ferrari returned to high-speed bouncing with a floor upgrade in Barcelona. "It seems trickier than that everyone thinks," Verstappen acknowledges. "At the moment, even McLaren is holding back a new floor, which they are not fully sure about. It's a lot more sensitive with upgrades than under previous regulations." Teams are also having difficulty linking their delicate floor modifications in the wind tunnel to how the car actually behaves in the real world, learning the hard way that downforce in the virtual world does not necessarily make a car faster on track. Given Red Bull's rather ancient wind tunnel and the team's ambitions for a new facility, this looks to be especially important. That is a very difficult topic to talk about, but it is more complicated to get that right than with the old cars, Verstappen acknowledges, while playing down the impact of the team's wind tunnel. "It's true that we have a fairly old wind tunnel, but until this year, it did everything right. Some things are just hard to understand. You see that with all the other teams as well, except McLaren. All teams have had their own problems, including teams with modern wind tunnels. I think it is just extremely difficult to fine-tune things perfectly, or to get exactly the right data out of it. That can be down to a lot of things in the wind tunnel itself, or how it correlates with the track. Red Bull's major goal is to halt its run of bad form and make gradual development. According to Verstappen, the upward trend has already begun with the Baku floor improvement. Verstappen chose the incorrect setup in Azerbaijan, making comparisons tough, but after a rough phase, teammate Sergio Perez was able to challenge for the podium before a late crash with Ferrari's Carlos Sainz. Verstappen finished second in Singapore a week later, and while he was well behind championship rival Lando Norris in the McLaren, Red Bull's second-place performance on what had been their worst circuit in 2023 was an encouraging indication. The team merely mentioned subtle tweaks to Baku's underfloor, but Verstappen believes this update is the start of a solution. "Yes, it felt better. That was already a good step for us. I do think we are moving in the right direction now. It will take some time. You can't turn something like this around in 1 or 2 weeks. But I do think the team was happy with what they saw in Baku as well. It's not enough to compete with Norris and McLaren for race victories just yet, but Red Bull will send another upgrade package to the US Grand Prix in Austin later this month. The scale and efficiency of its newest modifications need to be seen, but Verstappen believes the worst of this F1 season is behind him, with a terrible Monza race being the ultimate low point. "Yes, I do think so, to be honest. Hopefully we can continue to make good steps from here." Verstappen hopes so. Helmut Marko, on the other hand, thinks it will be tough. But what do you think? Has Marko already spilled on what's to come for Verstappen? A tough loss? Or have Red Bull found something that will make them winners again from Austin onwards? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.